Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would talk about this little video that I found very particularly interesting. And this is going to be a video by the channel known as Blue Blood Sports TV. And in this video, he's going to be talking about apparently the recent reaction former 2-weight division champion, world champion, I believe, Mr. Paul Maznagi, said about Gervonta Tank Davis. Now, according to certain sources and certain channels, there has been a lot of heat on Paul Maznagi as of late because of alleged racism and racial, comments when it comes down to it. Listen, I wouldn't really know anything about that because I haven't really done any research on it. Is it possible that Paul Maznagi has a racial issue? It's possible. It's possible. I think that a lot of these boxers or a certain amount of these athletes have a racial issue. But at the end of the day, when I just take a look at what Paul Maznagi said, at least about this subject, I'm just taking a look overall to see if it has any merit, all in all, and overall if there is any substance to it. And I do think that there is. And the thing that Paul Maznagi has recently said overall, and I believe that this is about Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis, is that he believes all in all that Gervonta Tank Davis, that he pretty much is not a legitimate three-weight division champion. And even though I think Gervonta Tank Davis, for how extraordinarily talented he is, and even though I think that he easily could probably become a three-weight division champion, at least debatably, right now I can't really call him a legitimate three-weight division champion. I mean, if you are a three-weight division champion, you're probably the weakest three-weight division champion that I've personally ever seen, just in terms of resume. I can't necessarily say that Gervonta Tank Davis, in my opinion, has really overall won legitimate belts within three weight classes. Now, of course, he was able to win the legitimate belt, I believe, at 130 pounds. But when you were at 135, I believe you won one of the regular titles. And when you were at 140 pounds, you also won one of the regular titles. Now, maybe certain people overall don't like my standards. Maybe certain people may say, well, we still have to count him as a champion. No, those are still belts. But in my opinion, if you don't have one of the four official belts, in my opinion, you're not a legitimate champion. It just is what it is. The regular title, to me, that's just overall, it has just as much merit as an interim title, as the IBO title when it comes down to it, and also as the WBC franchise title. I don't think that Gervonta Tank Davis, and don't get me wrong, I think that he's an extraordinary talent, but I don't think that Gervonta Tank Davis is a legitimate three-weight division champion. In my opinion, for you to be a three-weight, champion, you have to have won the official belts there. And that's what Paul Maznagi basically has said overall in his recent comments, and I do tend to agree with him. But we're going to see what Mr. Blue Blood Sports TV has to say, and let's get into it.
Good YouTube, it's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. Before we start, I need y'all to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, make sure the bell icon is on all so you can get all the new notifications. With that said, let's get into this. Two-division world champion, retired superstar boxer, Paulie the Magic Man Malignaggi. He finished his career 36 wins, 8 losses, no draws, 7 wins by way of knockout. 5 times in his career, he was knocked out. Safe to say, with Paulie Malignaggi having 44 fights in his career, he was not a big puncher. Out of 44 fights, he only had 7 knockouts. He was 5 foot.
No, Paul Maznagi was not known as a big puncher. I think you could find yourself a pair of curtains that had better overall punching power than what Paul Maznagi had.
8 with a 71-inch arm reach, okay? So with that said, Paulie Maznagi...
But that being said, let me give Paul Maznagi actually here a lot of credit. Because Paul Maznagi, in my opinion, he would make the Boxing Hall of Fame. And a certain amount of people, they may disagree, but the Boxing Hall of Fame, it's not really as exclusive as, say, what the NFL Hall of Fame would be. And I'm not really sure what the other Hall of Fames, how exclusive they are. But the Boxing Hall of Fame, they let a lot of people in. And in my opinion, this is at least my standard in the making the Boxing Hall of Fame. If you were at least a legitimate two-weight division champion, in my opinion, you deserve to make the Hall of Fame. All right? Maybe if you're a fighter that only won one official belt in their career, maybe like a David Lemieux, then maybe not, even though you could still debate him in the Boxing Hall of Fame. But when it comes down to it, Paul Maznagi, one thing I'll say about him is this. He at least did win 2 official titles in his career in 2 separate weight classes. So he can claim at the end of the day, overall, even over Gervonta Tank Davis, in my opinion, that he actually was a legitimate multi-weight divisional champion. Not even Gervonta Tank Davis, in my opinion, can claim that. Is that me saying that Paul Maznagi is greater than Gervonta Tank Davis? No, of course not. He has nowhere near the talent of a Gervonta Tank Davis, in my opinion. He has nowhere near the boxing ability of what a Gervonta Tank Davis had. And certainly nowhere near the punching power. But when it comes down to what I will say is this, at least Paul Malignaggi can claim at the end of the day that he won one of the 4 official titles at 140 and also at 147. Gervonta Tank Davis, he certainly claimed one of the official titles at 130 pounds, but at 135 and at 140, you won one of the regular titles. And in my opinion, I'm sorry, but I just don't count those as legitimate titles. The only titles that I count as legitimate are either the Super Belt when it comes down to it, or one of the official 4 titles.
He won world titles at 140 and at 147, junior welterweight and welterweight. Paul Malignaggi, he's fought some of the biggest names in the sport of boxing in the history, some Hall of Famers, but Paul Malignaggi was not always successful. The 2 biggest wins in his career was the Zab Judah fight, in my opinion, and the Juan Baby Bull Diaz fight, okay? He did win the world title, obviously. So with that said, Paulie Malignaggi, he fought the likes of Miguel Cotto. He fought Ricky Hatton. He lost to Ricky Hatton. He lost to Miguel Cotto. He lost his first fight with Juan Baby Bull Diaz. He lost to Amir Khan. He lost to Adrian the Problem Broner. Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, he lost to. And he lost his last fight against Eggington. Okay? So with that said, it's safe to say Paulie Malignaggi, the biggest fights in his career, he lost. But Paulie Malignaggi is a student of the sport of boxing. He is a mouthpiece and a colorful analyst for the sport of boxing. And Paulie Malignaggi, he doesn't hold back. So Paulie Malignaggi was asked about world champions in the sport of boxing. And he completely directed his attention to undefeated 3-division world champion, superstar boxer Gervonta Tank Davis, who is 26 wins, no losses, no draws, 24 big wins by way of knockout. Gervonta Tank Davis is 27 years of age, 5'5" with a 67-inch arm reach. But with that said, Paulie Malignaggi, he honed in on that. And he stated that it's just far too many belts in the sport of boxing. He stated that back in my days, you had to prove that you was a world champion. Now fighters are happy to promote themselves as world champions with secondary belts, as well as their promoters, promoting their.
I agree. And when it comes to Floyd Mayweather Jr., that's how I can tell that the reason why he's criticizing Canelo Alvarez, there's a secret agenda there. And I think that there's a multitude of reasons why he's doing it. Number one, I think that Gervonta Tank Davis is his protege. And I think that he maybe wants to argue him later on as the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter, and it can't tear Gervonta Tank Davis down. And number two, he realizes that there's going to be a great push for Canelo Alvarez to maybe later on be over him. Once again, would I ever say that Canelo Alvarez is 100% over Floyd Mayweather Jr.? I'm not sure if I would say that. But when it comes down to what I will say is this, Canelo, if he's able to unify 175 and is also able to beat that of a David Benavidez, Jamal Charlo, and Demetrius Bubu Andre, and a couple of other guys, a lot of people are going to put him in that same class. So it is what it is. But anyways, like I said, Floyd Mayweather Jr., before he goes casting stones against other recent fighters, he should probably worry about his boy Gervonta Tank Davis getting in the ring with the big boys in the first place.
Fighters as world champions with secondary belts. So Paul Malignaggi, he's referring to Gervonta Tank Davis's promoter, who is a legend in the sport of boxing, icon, Hall of Famer, superstar boxer, who retired undefeated, 50-0, 5-division world champion, former pound-for-pound king, the man known as Floyd Money Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather, he promotes Gervonta Tank Davis with Mayweather Promotions. So with that said, Floyd Mayweather, he refers to Gervonta Tank Davis as a 3-division world champion, okay? And Paul Malignaggi, he's not happy that Floyd Mayweather is doing that because he's saying Floyd Mayweather is cut from his cloth. Floyd Mayweather is cut from his era. He said back in our era, you had to prove yourself. You didn't flaunt secondary belts and consider yourself a multi-division world champion. And he says that Floyd Mayweather should know better because he looks at Gervonta Tank Davis and he says that Gervonta Tank Davis is a 1-division world champion. He said he never won a world title at one.
I agree, and that's pretty much how I look at it in my eyes as well. One of my favorite fighters to watch growing up was Mr. Arasani Lara. And Arasani Lara right now, I believe, is the regular WBA champion at middleweight right now. And I would never say all in all that Arasani Lara, he's a multi-weight division champion. Like, come on, man. I'm sorry, but that's just so weak. The regular title, really? Like, come on, man.
35, and he never won the world title at 140. He won the world title at 130, but he was never the official champion at 135 or 140. He said he won secondary belts against Yuriokis Gamboa, 3-division world champion, Olympic gold medalist. He fought Gamboa for the vacant WBA 135-pound title, but it was the regular title. It wasn't the official unified title, okay? The super title. And then he stated that, he won it against Mexican star boxer Mario Barrios at 140, but again, that was a regular title because the true champion at 140 is undefeated, undisputed British superstar boxer Josh Taylor. Okay, so he said Josh Taylor is the official champion. So how could Gervonta Tank Davis be a champion at 140 when he didn't fight and beat Josh Taylor?
I agree. I agree with you 100%. Gervonta Tank Davis should not be, or what I should say is this, he can never call himself a legitimate multi-weight divisional champion if he never actually wins any of the official belts within any of those weight classes. He can't do it. As of right now, in my mind, Gervonta Tank Davis, he's only a one-weight division champion.
Okay.
Even the other fighters that I don't think they have super duper impressive resumes, like a Terrence Bud Crawford, even though, of course, it's not the worst resume out there. But at least Terrence Bud Crawford, even though a lot of those fighters are not A grade, he beat the fighters that he needed to at the time. He overall was a legitimate champion at 135. He was a legitimate unified champion at 140. He is a legitimate champion now at 147 pounds. Terrence Crawford can claim that he is a legitimate three-weight division champion. Gervonta Tank Davis cannot do that as of yet.
He stated that at 135, he didn't beat the world champion, who was Vasil Lomachenko, I believe, at the time, was the 135-pound champion. He said that, so how could he be the champion at 135? Okay. So he says he's a one-division champion, and Floyd Mayweather, who once upon a time complained about the too many belts being in the sport of boxing and watered down the sport. Floyd Mayweather, he stated that they need to do away with some of these belts. And he said, but at the same time, Floyd Mayweather is promoting his fighter. He gets it. He's a promoter, and he has to, brag about his fighter, okay? He says, but he's not a 3-division champion. He's a 1-division champion. He's not a multi-division champion. And he needs to fight better opposition.
And Paulie Malignaggi has every right to say that. He's a former weight two world division champion. And on top of that, he has the right to his opinion. And his opinion, in my opinion, is right on the money. Gervonta Tank Davis is nothing more, in my opinion, than a one-weight division champion. He, in my opinion, is one of the most talented fighters in all the sport of boxing. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But at the end of the day, don't be calling your fighter, overall a multi-weight division champion when, the majority of those titles, they were pretty much nothing overall than, a fugazi. It just is what it is.
Okay, he needs to up his level of opposition. That's the complaint when it comes to Gervonta Tank Davis, with many people being boxing
Like, a lot of these channels, they'll bitch, moan, and complain about, and Blue Blood, I don't know if he's necessarily included with this, although, sometimes I think that he may, be a bit biased as well. But especially that of Adante's Boxing Nation or Aki TV, they always complain about how the WBC franchise title isn't real and that George Kambosos, he's not the WBC champion. And I agree. In my opinion, regular titles, they have just as much merit as the WBC franchise title has. It's not a legitimate belt. It just is what it is.
Media members or fans within the sport of boxing, they want to see Gervonta Tank Davis in the ring with better opposition. So Paulie Malignaggi, he's stating that, Gervonta Tank Davis is a 130-pound champion. He's not a 135 nor 140-pound champion, okay? Now, many people are going to look at Paulie Malignaggi and they're going to say, well, who are you to speak when you lost your biggest fights, your title fights? Well,
right, but at the end of the day, all in all, Paulie Malignaggi, he can actually claim that he has more merit as a multi-weight division champion than what Gervonta Tank Davis can. Now, once again, would I ever put Paulie Malignaggi above Gervonta Tank Davis in terms of talent? Would I ever put him above him in terms of greatness? No, of course not. Paulie was never able to do things that Gervonta Tank Davis could do. But at the end of the day, at least what Paulie Malignaggi can say is that, listen, I was the official champion within 2-weight divisions, when it comes down to it. I had one of the 4 official belts. You're holding these fake-ass titles. It just is what it is.
He's a world champion. He is officially a world champion in 2 separate weight classes, So, with that said,
I agree with you, Blue. You're right on the money in this video so far.
Gervonta Tank Davis, he does hold the WBA regular title at 35 and 40. So Paul and Malignaggi, that's not entirely Gervonta Tank Davis' fault. That is the sanction bodies. They're watering down.
Well, you know what? A lot of people are not going to want to blame Gervonta Tank Davis. They say, oh, it's his promoter. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. Has Gervonta Tank Davis really been calling to get a lot of these big fights? Every time Vasily Lomachenko has really been brought up to this man, he pretty much shits his pants a little. All of a sudden, he has a little bit of diarrhea. It is what it is. And there's no offense against Gervonta Tank Davis. I like him. He's an extraordinary fighter to watch. He's a real treat to watch. But it's like, come on, dude. Your next fight is allegedly going to be over Rolly Romero, and a certain amount of people, a certain amount of my commentators, even they said actually that they would actually love to see that fight. I think I can understand why to a certain degree because Rolly can punch and he talks a hot one. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, that's just not a big fight. It is what it is. It'll be a big fight. Maybe, well, I won't even say that. It may be able to do better, of course, than the Isaac Pitbull Cruz fight because they're two Mayweather promotional fighters, and it could be looked at as fireworks. They're both power punchers, and Rolly Romero talks a hot one. So it may be able to do somewhat okay on pay-per-view, but when it comes down to it, no one really takes a look at Rolly Romero, and no one says, wow, you know what? I think Rolly Romero has a real chance over Gervonta Tank Davis. I don't see it.
Sport themselves, adding in too many belts into the sport of boxing. You have the WBC, World Boxing Council, President Mauricio Suleiman introducing a franchise title into the sport of boxing, causing much confusion within the sport of boxing, okay? Too much confusion. Now you have multi-world champions and franchise champions. You look at the lightweight division, okay? You have George Kambosos Jr., who changed his status after he shockingly defeated former unified lightweight world champion superstar boxer Teofimo Lopez, and he did so in majority decision. And now he's flaunting his titles as if he's undisputed. Initially, he stated he knew he had to go through undefeated WBC lightweight world champion superstar boxer Devin the Dream Haney to officially be undisputed. Now, George Kambosos, because the president Mauricio Suleiman is saying that George Kambosos Jr. should be viewed as the undisputed champion, well, he changed his status on his social media to the undisputed lightweight champion.
Of course, and I believe that the WBC franchise title, that is not a legitimate title. It is what it is, it's whatever. If you do not have the legitimate WBC title, you're not the WBC champion. And just like how I would say that with George Kambosos, I'm going to say the same thing with Gervonta Tank Davis. You are not a legitimate three-weight division champion.
So, it can't be, explained more than just looking at the lightweight division and the confusion that's there, okay? Because we have 6 undisputed, 4 major sanctioned belt holders in the history of the sport of boxing. And George Kambosos Jr. nor Teofimo Lopez are one of them. Okay, you have Bernard Hopkins at number 1. You have Jermaine Taylor at number 2, who beat Bernard Hopkins to become number 2. Then you have Terrence Crawford at 3, junior welterweight undisputed champion to hold all 4 belts. Then you have Oleksandr Usyk, Olympic gold medalist, who became undisputed at cruiserweight. Then you have Josh Taylor, who became undisputed at junior welterweight.
And then you have Canelo Alvarez.
So he beat Regis Prograis for the IBF title. Then he beat Jose Ramirez in a unification bout. Okay, so with that said, he beat the 2 world champions that become undisputed officially at junior welterweight. Then most recently, you have 4-division world champion Mexican superstar boxer Saul Canelo Alvarez, who defeated.
Yes, and Canelo can call himself at the end of the day that he is a legitimate 4-weight division champion. Even if he were to go up to even if he were to go up to cruiserweight and go up to 200 pounds, if he were to beat Ilunga Makabu, do I think that Ilunga Makabu is the greatest of champions? No, I don't. But if Canelo were able to beat him, he could legitimately call himself a cruiserweight division champion. Gervonta Tank Davis cannot call himself a legitimate 3-weight division champion until you've actually won the official belts there. Just my view of it.
The world champions at super middleweight, all the world champions at super middleweight outside of David Benavidez. Now, David Benavidez, he lost his title on.
Well, David Benavidez is no longer a champion.
Scale the WBC title. So Canelo Alvarez, he fought Caleb Smith for the vacant WBC title and Caleb Smith's WBA title. So he collected all 4 major sanctioned belts to become the 6th fighter in the history of the sport of boxing to become undisputed. And he did so, becoming the first undisputed super middleweight in the history of the sport of boxing. So there's only 6. If that's the case, Canelo Alvarez will view himself as the 7th undisputed champion behind Teofimo Lopez, who beat Vasil Lomachenko before Canelo Alvarez unified the division at super middleweight. So he would be considered 7, that being Canelo Alvarez, and everybody would consider George Kambosos Jr. at number 9. Okay, I mean, excuse me, at 8. Okay.
Well, Canelo Alvarez is a legitimate unified champion. I'm not sure if he was trying to say that maybe he wasn't just because he didn't face David Benavidez. But at the end of the day, David Benavidez did not have the legitimate title. So it is what it is.
And nobody views them as such. Everybody views Canelo Alvarez as the number 6 undisputed champion to hold all 4 major sanction belts, the Ring Magazine linealship in the history of
I agree.
the sport of boxing. Okay, so the confusion, all you have to do is point to the lightweight division if you want to be even more confused. If you want to get an explanation that there's just far too many belts in the sport of boxing. So I agree with Paulie Malignaggi. I still view Gervonta Tank Davis as such because that's what he's titled.
Listen, in my opinion, when it comes to regular titles or interim titles, I'm not necessarily 100% sure how some of the sanctioning bodies work, but those, in my opinion, should only be used for contendership, in my opinion, or only getting the bigger fights with the legitimate champion to put yourself in a mandatory position. Those are the only things that, in my opinion, it should be used for, but it's not a legitimate belt.
But I do agree.
It's just like in the UFC. Like when I take a look at Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier at one point in time was the interim lightweight champion, the 155-pound champion. But he was never the official champion. So at the end of the day, Dustin Poirier, he can never put himself on the level of Khabib Nurmagomedov or on a prime Conor McGregor when it comes down to it, because those are guys, in my opinion, that were next level during their peak. Now, would I put Dustin Poirier maybe above certain other fighters that maybe won an official belt like a Max Holloway? Maybe, because Dustin Poirier was able to beat him a couple of times, and on top of that, Dustin Poirier, he's just all around more skilled than what a Max Holloway was. But when it comes down to it, like I said, if you never won that official title, you can never claim yourself to be a multi-weight divisional champion.
There is too many belts, too many titles. There's too much confusion within the sport of boxing, and I definitely feel like it needs to be eliminated for sure. And I do agree that Gervonta Tank Davis should be fighting better opposition. Now it's being talked about again that Gervonta Tank.
Well, good for you, Blue, because you could have been one of these channels like a Dante's Boxing Nation or Aki TV and lied about the tier competition that Gervonta Tank Davis has fought and said, oh, well, he's facing the best Mexican fighters out there. Like, come on, dude, who are you really trying to fool? And I'm talking about Dante and some of these other ridiculous channels out there.
Davis is going to be facing off against the WBA lightweight interim champion, Rolando Rolly Romero, who was his initial opponent for his December 5th fight, in which he had to have a replacement because of some serious allegations alleged against Rolando Rolly Romero that saw him removed from the fight, and Gervonta Tank Davis faced off against Mexican star boxer Isaac Pitbull Cruz in replacement. Now there's talks that he's going at the WBA, World Boxing Association President Gilberto Mendoza orders Gervonta Tank Davis to fight against Rolando Rolly Romero when neither one of them are the official WBA champion, because that would be one George Kambosos Jr. So when you got sanctioned bodies ordering fights as if these are 2 world champions, when you have a guy in George Kambosos Jr. who holds the WBA, WBO, and the IBF and the Ring Magazine belt, and you're still considering them the champions and ordering them to fight each other, well, that speaks volumes in itself. So let's see how this plays out and unfolds. But Paulie Malignaggi had some very choice words for Floyd Mayweather and Gervonta Tank Davis when
he had the correct words for them.
It comes to Gervonta Tank Davis being regarded as a 3-division world champion. But that's all I got for y'all. Make sure you hit the like button. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know.
But that's pretty much about it for this video. But I thought that Blue Blood Sports TV, I thought that he was right on the money in this video. And I thought that Paulie Malignaggi was right on the money when it came down to it. Because once again, if you never won any of the official titles within those weight classes, how can you really call yourself a legitimate 3-weight division champion? But it just is what it is. Anyways, that's really about it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to y'all later.